The leader of Hezbollah is dead, but is Hezbollah dead in itself? Today we'll explain to you the phases of war that now is being carried out between Israel and Hezbollah. What's really happened? What's going to happen? What's the strategy forward? Is Iran going to get involved? And what happens to the fate of Hezbollah after Nasrallah's killing? This is a very big moment, not just in this conflict, but for the future of West Asia. In the year 2006, the last Lebanon war, Israel tried and failed to kill him. But on 27 September, in a huge series of strikes on southern Beirut, they finally hit their target. Over the past 18 years, Nasrallah has grown Hezbollah into a massive force by expanding its capabilities, building its infrastructure, and significantly expanding its arsenal. He wasn't just the leader of Hezbollah, he was a global figurehead of anti-Israel resistance. With Iran's help, Hezbollah became one of the best armed non-state militaries in the world. But now, with the group's leader being assassinated, who took over as the outfit's chief in 1992 when he was just 32, Hezbollah is now decapitated and in disarray. The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah has been confirmed by the group and Israel. The strikes on September 27th was the latest in a series of massive explosions targeting leaders of the militant group. The Israeli Defense Forces claim that the attack achieved its biggest kill in the war against Hezbollah. According to the Israeli military, their Air Force jets carried out a precise airstrike while the Hezbollah leadership met at their headquarters in Dahiyeh, south of Beirut. IDF also tweeted, and I quote, "Hassan Nasrallah will no longer be able to terrorize the world."
Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the terrorist army Hezbollah, was killed by Israel Defense Forces in a precise strike in Beirut last night while he was in Hezbollah's central headquarters commanding more imminent attacks against the people of Israel.
Now listen to this exclusive radio communication which we have got. This was recorded during the moment Israel struck Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut.
אתם הבאתם פה הצגת ניצחון, אני מקווה, יישר כוח. אנחנו מאוד מקווים שגרתנו פה את ארגון הטרור הזה. יישר כוח גרטנה.
תודה רבה מחר. אנחנו נגיע לכל אחד, לכל מקום, ונעשה כל מה שנדרש כדי להחזיר את החטופים ותושבי הצפון הבית.
עד הניצחון, יישר כוח.
The escalation in Israeli attacks on Hezbollah started first with pagers and then with walkie-talkies. And we at India Today Global, from the very beginning, have been saying that these Israeli attacks were just the tip of the iceberg and a major upsurge is yet to happen. And now it seems a potential Israeli ground offensive is on the cards. Israeli tanks are being transported across northern Israel. To better understand how Israel is preparing for its war against Hezbollah, we are now being joined by Rohan Gunarathna, who is a specialist in national and international security matters. He is also the editor of the Handbook on Terrorism in the Middle East, has traveled very widely, including to Lebanon, and can speak of the phases of war that we will be discussing now, which is going to be a major part of the strategy. So, Professor Gunaratna, the fact that there are different stages of war, we were discussing it earlier, and like we were telling our viewers, India Today Global was the first to really come out and talk about how the pager attacks, walkie-talkie attacks were not the main thrust or the main focus of Israel, that there's more to it. It was just prelude to the attacks that followed. And we're the first ones to talk about that. You explained to us in detail, but today we're going to discuss the phases of this war. There is a strategy here that we're looking at. There is a strategy that Israel is following. What's that strategy and where is it leading to?
Military strategy has three phases. One is disrupting the communications phase. So the Israeli security and intelligence services implanted the explosives in the pagers and in the walkie-talkies in phase one, where the communication system of Lebanese Hezbollah was disrupted. And that created a huge disadvantage for the Lebanese Hezbollah. They couldn't coordinate their communications properly, both in Lebanon and with their sponsors overseas and their partners overseas. That itself weakened the organization very significantly, because command and control and communications are the three pillars. And that first pillar was disrupted.
In phase one, how did they do what they did with the communication links?
Phase one of war was a classic intelligence operation. That is, the Israelis were able to create front companies and ensure that the requirements for Lebanese Hezbollah's communication system using pagers and walkie-talkies, the supplier became a front company. Of course, the Israeli intelligence service fronted, but the Lebanese Hezbollah didn't know. They thought that they were procuring from a bona fide company that provides communications technology. But the Israelis did what is called a supply chain operation, upstream operation. They planted the explosives and they sent those explosive devices to Lebanon. The Israelis would have waited without detonating those devices, but I understand that there was a risk of exposure that became more. They were listening into the Lebanese Hezbollah communications, so they decided to move very quickly and do the detonations that injured more than 3,000 Lebanese Hezbollah leaders and members and supporters. Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Lebanese Hezbollah, had said not to use phones. In fact, he said the phone is your main enemy. And that is how we saw that the phones were replaced by the pagers and by walkie-talkies. The reason Hassan Nasrallah said that is because there were a number of phone calls that were intercepted. And also Hassan Nasrallah knew that Hamas number one bomb maker Yahya Ayash was killed when his phone was given for repair and it was returned back. And when Yahya Ayash called his father, signal was sent and he was, the phone detonated, killing him instantly. So the measures that the Lebanese Hezbollah took, Israel understood it, and they are very good in their intelligence tradecraft. So they were able to implant micro explosive devices into the pagers and into the communications, pagers, walkie-talkies, and other communication systems. The second phase was the Israelis mounting very precise attacks. They eliminated the head of the Ridwan force, Ibrahim Akil, who posed the biggest threat to Israel, because the Hezbollah had a plan to attack the north of Israel, and that's called the Ridwan force. And it was the Lebanese Hezbollah that gave the blueprint to Hamas to stage the October 7th attack. And the Israelis are already prepared to mount an operation against the Hezbollah at the time of the Hamas invasion. So for the IDF, it didn't take much to launch this operation, because they had already been collecting intelligence and they had a target bank of Hassan Nasrallah and the tier 2 and the tier 3 leaders. As such, the IDF was very precise in eliminating the leadership. There were civilian fatalities and casualties, but the numbers were small compared to other military operations that we have seen either in Afghanistan, in Libya or in Syria or in Iraq. Why? Because the IDF knew exactly where the Lebanese Hezbollah leaders were based. The next phase is Israel will want to stabilize the threats against them, and they have seen that the support for the Lebanese Hezbollah, the support for Hamas, the support for Ansarullah, the Houthi group in Yemen, is coming from Iran. So it is very likely in the next phase that Israel will either threaten to a point of deterrence or they will attack Iran. So it is very likely that we will see the theater of war widening first from the developments in Gaza and then going to Lebanon. And today Lebanon is the main battlefield in the Middle East.
How did they do this? What was the penetration of intelligence and the operational details of how they got this job done, including the fact that Netanyahu was in New York at the time that these strikes were taking place, were carried out?
The Israelis have a very sophisticated security and intelligence system. They have an internal security service called the Internal Security Agency called the Shin Bet. And they have a foreign intelligence service called the Mossad. But their most powerful intelligence services, in my personal opinion, having interviewed members of all these three services, is its military intelligence. So the military intelligence is the agency that does the assessments of what is the biggest threat to Israel. So the military intelligence service had done a meticulous mapping together with the other services of Israel of the Lebanese Hezbollah. They knew exactly the houses, the officers, and where the Lebanese Hezbollah leaders will go to have lunch, to have dinner, to have breakfast, where their wives were, where their mistresses were, where their children were, right? Which cinema they will go to, right? Who their friends are. There was a meticulous mapping, which vehicles they used. So the Israelis were able, with great precision, to eliminate the tree, the Lebanese Hezbollah tree. And if you look at that tree, there is a third tier, there's a second tier, and there is what is called the first tier leaders. The first tier leaders are the directing figures. The second tier leaders are the managers of operations. And the third tier leaders are the Lebanese Hezbollah leaders that do the actual work on the ground. Okay. So the Israelis had mapped this meticulously, and they eliminated with great precision in a very short period of 72 hours. They eliminated the entire leadership, crippling the command structure of the Lebanese Hezbollah. And the Israelis chose a very opportune moment to do that.
Okay. Who next? If we continue with the second phase and we talk about the leadership itself, there is a map that has been put out, a chart of all the leadership, which should also include Mohammed Sarur, but not there. But that's what Israel has put out, including Mohammed Sarur. So who are the leaders who've been eliminated? If you could just go through maybe the top rung and explain to us how they got them. We do know that Fahad Shukra's elimination very specifically has been mentioned on how he was moved from one floor to the other. So there was internal intelligence penetration where there are sources inside who are moving the target to a place where the strike is going to take place.
So the elimination of these targets were achieved with deception as well. For instance, when Netanyahu went to address the United Nations, he walked in so confidently to the UN General Assembly. Of course, the moment he started to speak at the General Assembly, we saw that some of the Arab leaders left the assembly. But I also want to share with you that when he left the assembly, something very important happened. Netanyahu spoke with great precision. And when he spoke with that precision, he said that anyone who harms them, that they will strike. He also made a very significant threat against Iran. And what I would like to share with you is that Netanyahu's very presence at the General Assembly created a sense of false security for the Lebanese Hezbollah leadership. They became very careless because they were all focused on watching Netanyahu's visit to the UN. And it is at that time that the IDF mounted an attack to kill the apex leadership of the Lebanese Hezbollah. So basically, the only key leader that is there right now to take over the Lebanese Hezbollah is a man called Hashim Saif al-Din, who is the executive council chair of the Lebanese Hezbollah.
Okay.
So you can see very clearly how the Israelis deceived the Lebanese Hezbollah to do that targeted killing in many ways by integrating deception into their operational art. Phase 3 in the coming days, coming weeks, and coming months. It very much depends on Iran's response to the assassination of the Hamas leader in Tehran, the Iranian response to the attacks against Lebanese Hezbollah. So Iran's response will determine Israel's response to Israel. As we speak, I have seen very vital intelligence of Iranian plane carrying weaponry to Lebanon. And this plane, Israel said that they will intercept this plane. So the plane took a U-turn and returned back to Iran. So you can see that Israel will dominate the skies, and Israel is likely to dominate the southern part of Lebanon, because Israel is going to settle its displaced civilians from the north of Israel. And Israel do not want the Lebanese Hezbollah to have a presence in southern Lebanon. So we will see the next phase, which will be a much bigger phase of war, where even Russia can get involved in its support for Iran. Every single counterterrorism operation, especially targeting leaders of the scale of Osama bin Laden or Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, in this case, Hassan Nasrallah, is based on precision and timing. So the Israelis have a target bank, and they will invest significant resources to identify where the terrorist leaders are at any given time. With whom are they communicating? With whom are they moving? What they're discussing and what they're planning next to do. That is the whole task of intelligence, what you call high-grade, high-quality intelligence. And in the case of Hassan Nasrallah's elimination, the Prime Minister of Israel was in the United States, and he gave the instruction to eliminate Hassan Nasrallah when he was in the United States. In fact, you can see in one particular image where he gave the specific instruction on a secure communication to the IDF leadership that included the IDF defense minister, as well as the chief of defense staff and their intelligence chiefs. And it is at that point that the strike was conducted. So you can see that as Commander-in-Chief This operation was approved at the highest level of the Israeli government and at the most critical moment.
This is a pivotal moment in West Asia. Iran and Hezbollah must now decide how to respond, fight, or back down. I say this because, according to reports, Israel allegedly breached the communication network of the control tower at Beirut's Rafiq Hariri International Airport and warned an Iranian plane against landing, prompting the aircraft to turn around and return to Tehran. In response to Israel's alert, Lebanese Public Works and Transport Minister Ali Hamia instructed the Iranian flight not to land at Beirut International Airport. He further added that Israel warned that it would attack the airport if an Iranian civilian aircraft on its way to Lebanon landed there. If Iran comes and joins this theater of war, then it has the potential to expand far beyond the region, and the consequences of it will be felt across the globe. Rohan Gunarathna again explained as to what this means, and is Hezbollah absolutely decimated, or are we looking at a future where there is going to be a Hezbollah 2.0 in a new form with new modes and new methods of attacking Israel?
Iran's strategy is to fight not directly, not to use conventional war, but to use what you call irregular war. Irregular war is they will use proxies to fight. They do not want to get into a direct confrontation because Israel will attack Iran's oil infrastructure. Israel will attack Iran's nuclear and the infrastructure of its other strategic weapons. So Iran is very much aware of that. So because of deniability to prevent attribution and retribution, Iran has a classic style of operating through proxies, through Nasrallah, through Hezbollah, through Hamas, through Palestinian Islamic Jihad, through Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, and through the resistance fronts both in Syria and in Iraq. That is the way Iran operates. And Israel knows that, and Israel knows as long as the head of the octopus is intact, that the tentacles will move. And that is why Iran is now the primary target of Israel. Israel has also done very careful calculations of Iran's nuclear program, and Israel is aware that Iran is very close to completing the construction of a nuclear weapon. Iran only doesn't have a launch mechanism, and it is a question of time that Iran will be able to acquire that capability. And because of that, it is very likely that Israel will prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear power.
Okay,
by striking Iran.
That's a very important point, that before Iran becomes completely nuclear, Israel would want to eliminate. So the next target, is it Ayatollah Khamenei? Because a statement has come out from Ayatollah Khamenei talking about the Muslim world having to, or the need for the Muslim world to come together to fight Israel. We do know that despite all the animosity between the Sunni Arab world and Hezbollah, there are Saudi Arabian leaders in UN and other Arab leaders who've come out and condemned Israel for its actions. What next? Is the head of the octopus the supreme leader in Iran? And is he the next target?
As we speak, Israel is ready to attack Iran, but Israel will once again choose the timing precisely. Timing is everything in military warfare, strategy. And Israel is aware that Lebanese Hezbollah has been crippled, but not totally dismantled. Israel is aware that the Lebanese Hezbollah operates with other resistance fronts meaning other groups that are in the Middle East and elsewhere. Lebanese Hezbollah is a global organization, and those entities can always strike Israeli and Jewish interests outside Israel. And Israel is also aware that it should not expand too much beyond fighting a two-frontal battle, because the situation in West Bank is also now boiling, and it is very likely that sometimes Israel may have to intervene also in the West Bank. So Israel will very carefully calculate about when to attack Iran, because attacking Iran is not like attacking Hamas or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad or the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, either in Gaza or West Bank, or attacking the Lebanese Hezbollah or Nasrallah. Iran is a major power. It has huge capabilities, strategic weapons, and also very large standing army. So Iran will discuss with its partners and allies before doing that. It is very likely that Iran will wait for the US presidential election before doing that.
But that's the only window Israel has. So Israel will continue attacking, and Iran will withhold till the time the elections take place. Is that even a possibility?
Israel will very carefully weigh the implications of an attack on Iran. Israel will also deter Iran from providing assistance to those resistance fronts or its proxies. But in the event those proxies continue to attack Israel, Israel will retaliate against Iran. And that operation will be devastating, because it will have far-reaching implications around the world. Certainly the Shia and the Sunni communities, there is a division. You have seen in the case of Hassan Nasrallah when he was killed, the Sunnis celebrated, not all Sunnis, because Iran has been trying to bring the Shia and the Sunni together for strategic reasons. But attacking a country like Iran will have major global implications, because the Russians are working very closely with Iran. So it could very well lead to a war beyond the Middle East.
Nasrallah might be dead, but Hezbollah isn't. Hezbollah is badly wounded, not just as a paramilitary force, but in the eyes of the Lebanese people, many of whom are angry that their country is now facing another period of devastating violence. As the war escalates, the risk of further escalation looms large, especially with Iran's potential involvement and the likelihood of a ground offensive. The situation remains volatile, and how Iran and Hezbollah choose to respond will be pivotal in shaping the future stability of the region. Thank you for watching India Today Global.